Okay. All righty. We want to our goal is to learn about the giants of Tanakh. Thank you. And with practical takeaways. So we're going to start with the creation of Adam. That's what we're going to focus on today. Adam meaning man, meaning us. And then we're going to work next week. We're going to focus on Chava, and we'll move from there. So in terms of understanding Adam, i.e. us, let's open up the Chumash a minute. I put together some core terms that'll be helpful today and God willing, forever. Okay, so turn to page 2. Okay, so Chumash starts out with Bereshit bara, right? As we all know, we're very, very familiar. But and we've talked about this before in different contexts, but I want to talk about the creation in terms of Adam and Chava, how we understand. So firstly, the term bara, if you look on your term sheets, bara means to create with thought, right? Bara means to create with thought, which we create from nothing. We'll talk about in a second. But if I'm creating with thought, thank you, Jim. Rama, what does it mean to create with thought? What does that mean?
With a plan.
With a what?
Plan.
With a plan for the future, right? Why are you sitting so far? Why don't you come sit here? I can't hear you. Huh? There's nothing physical happening, right? So creating with thought is where everything starts. Clearly, everything starts. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with thought. In other words, he brought a rough, unstructured thing into existence, which we call Shamayim Ba'aretz, with thought. It's very important. Very important on a number of levels. First of all, we understand that the term bara, livro, nivra, you're going to see the term a lot. We're going to see the term with the animal kingdom. We're going to see the term with the taninim, with those fantastic, gigantic whales that were too great to sit on the planet. And we're going to see the term with man, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates certain things with thought. Now, when I create something with thought, Jem, what does that mean? How are you, man? Hi, how are you? Hi, Jen, how are you? When I create something with thought, what does it mean?
That he just didn't do it. I think that it was
When I create something, so we're on page 2. We're going to talk about Adam today. When we talk about creating with thought, means what?
But it was something that he pondered.
He pondered it. Fantastic. He pondered it. Right. It starts as a thought. So it starts rough. It starts unstructured. It starts unrefined, right? Keep that in mind. When man was created, when Adam and Chava was created, it's unrefined. It's unstructured. It's a golem, possibly. It's a different, it's not what we have today and not what we're going to have very quickly in terms of Briat HaOlam. But let's start with the following. God left it. Imagine in your minds that he creates this gumpy, unstructured mass when nothing is clear and nothing is identifiable, nothing. You just see a glob, and that's Aretz. And then you see a different glob that appears to be different. They're connected, but it appears to be different, and that's Shamayim. That's earth and that's heaven. Huh?
Things there before.
Why things there before?
Because his thought is taking from a bumpy world.
No, he created something from nothing. From nothing, he created a gumpy world. Now,
Space.
huh?
He left space.
He created space. Good. Hi, how are you? Right, made it. Great. So we're gonna do Adam today, okay? So, okay. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu creates with thought. Let's go to Rachel to Sarah's question a minute. There's a period before creation. We're not going to talk about it today, but to address your points, there is a period before creation. Again, we're using terms loosely. And when Hakadosh Baruch Hu creates, he's mechadesh. He creates something new. In other words, God always existed. We hold that his ratzon, his will to do absolute good, always existed. And God's will to do absolute good is the only element of God that we can engage. His etzem, his essence, we can't engage. It's too great, too far away from our capacity. But what we can engage is his will, which is overwhelming good. That will of overwhelming good manifests in the 10 spheres, the 10 sefirot, the 10 different expressions of that absolute good on earth, right? It expresses itself that way. Those predated creation. So we have a certain etzem, a certain essence, which we can't approach. We have an essence we can't approach. We have sefirot, which are manifestations, which are extensions of that, which we will approach, which we'll see. And once you go from A, an extension of A, and then we have this term called chidush or mechadesh, where Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, decides to create the world. So, absolute eternity with definition. There's a definition to the eternity. We call it sefirot, the peulot, spheres, the manifestation of those spheres, and like that. Just park that in your minds for now. We'll circle back to it. And then there's this term, and it's important to own the term, a term of creating anew, lechadesh, to create new. So Kadosh Baruch Hu at a certain point does decide to create new. And that's the scene we're talking about here. So it's hard to imagine that in something that's absolutely eternal and unchanging, there could be a change, right? When he created the world and created us and so on, that was a change, but it was a change. At least that's the word we use. But the word we use from a Torah point of view is mechadesh, lechadesh, to create new. Okay? Now, that doesn't, beautiful, perfect. That does not always refer to something from nothing. In this case, it does. Very good. So the something from nothing is, what do we call that in Hebrew? It should have been on this page. What do we call that in Hebrew? Yesh me'ayin. Yesh me'ayin. Yesh, something, me'ayin, with an olive, from nothing. Right? Good. Now, one second. I didn't say no. I said I want to explain it. When we create something from nothing, we create something from nothing with thought, right? That's the basis of creating something from nothing, is with thought. That applied in this process, and it applies to us in our lives, right? When we envision something, when we have a new idea, it's rough, it's unfinished, it's raw, it's largely wrong and somewhat right? That's bara, that's yesh me'ayin. Good? Excellent. No, it's not always yesh me'ayin. It really is not. But we'll see where it's not. In this case, it is. Fine. In this case, it is. In this case, it's yesh me'ayin. Now, in the case of Shamayim Ba'aretz, heavens and earth. Now, when God creates Shamayim Ba'aretz, he creates them together to establish a together linkage forever. This is a massive point. When he creates, it didn't create Aretz and then Shamayim, or Shamayim and then Aretz. He creates the land or the physical world and the non-physical world together one time to demonstrate that they stay together, and there's a flow and there's a connection. It's not this world and that world. It's this world, that world. How are you? All right. Wow. Hi, Flora. How are you? Hi, Shalom. Hi, guys. Great to see you guys. So, you have more? So the fact that this world and that this world and that world were created together creates that kav yashir. Another important term, kav yashir. Kav kuf vav yashir. Yud shin yud resh. Kav yashir is a direct connection. It's a direct line. So we're establishing at this point that the creation is fluid. It's not static here and there. There's a fluidness about creation. Okay? So bara means raw, unstructured, sometimes yesh me'ayin, not always. Early development. Good? That's the context that everything is built from. Meaning, everything, and of course Adam, everything is created this way. Everything, which means that there's a development to the creation of everything. So when we see that that God said create animals, and they weren't. They were and weren't. Good. We're going to see what they were and what they weren't. Okay, but for now, when we're setting the stage, and we're about to create man, what we're saying is it all starts with thought. Thought is termed lechadesh, and it's an important word. Lechadesh, mechadesh, to create anew. It's a very important term because it allows us to even approach God in this thing. Because if we didn't accept the idea that God could be mechadesh, the whole system falls apart. Because if I have an eternal being that can change, that has a core definition that on some level I could see, but on a large level I can't, how could I, what are you talking about? Where did this come from? How could it come? If something is unchanging and absolute and eternal, where does this come from? It can't be, because if it is and it wasn't, it means there was a change. Right? Good. So fundamentally, we have to struggle with this. And that's why our rabbis on more of the Kabbalistic side of things, they spend a lot of time on this. And they frame certain things. They frame etzem, which is the essence of God with an ayin, the essence of God that we will never understand. Then they frame ratzon, the will of God, which we can see, that is absolutely built for good. Okay? Then they frame the shocker of them, and that is the element of chidush, of new, because chidush runs contrary to eternal. It can't be that there's eternal and there's new. How does that work? The answer is it does. Do we understand how it does? No. Because logically, right? You're with me? Logically, it can't work. Logically, there can't be a change. But we call the term lechadesh. Yeah.
Like he created and then we're supposed to evolve.
He created what?
He creates and then we evolve.
He creates and then we evolve. That's exactly right. And everything evolves. Everything evolves, yeah.
creating something to creation, the thought is being well, not necessarily.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So that would be the logical approach. The logical approach is if I'm thinking something, it doesn't manifest yet. If I'm thinking something, it doesn't manifest because it's a thought, right? How could a thought be a thing? It can't. It's a thought, right? Good. So what is the chidush here? The chidush here is that a thought is a thing, that a thought is real, and that's a big deal. So if I thought one way on Monday and I thought differently on Tuesday, that's a change in reality. That's a mitziut change. Well, what do you mean? It's only a thought. No, but a thought changes somebody. So you're right. In this case, the thought manifests in a real glob of X, but it's meant to convey the forever model that a thought manifests in reality, even if it's never spoken. It manifests in reality, and it's transformative. And that's why we have the whole issue. Some of us did it on the summer. We have the whole issue of what you can think on Shabbat. Right, beautiful. We held from the mystical point of view, if you remember, we have the Maran Shulchan Aruch, who holds on a very practical level that the reality is I'm not ultimately what I think. I'm impacted by what I think, but not totally transformed by what I think. So therefore, I can think what I want to think on Shabbat because it doesn't practically take me out of the mindset of Shabbat. That's Maran, that's Harambam, that's the practical level of thinkers.
Maybe now it is that, but during the week, you're responsible for your thoughts.
Good. I'm responsible for that all the time. The question is, does my thought, is it transformative enough to break the oneg of Shabbat, to break the mindset and pleasure of Shabbat? The Kabbalistic rabbis say 100%. That's what they say. Therefore, they'll say things like, the Shpi says, you can't even greet a person with good morning on Shabbat. You have to say Shabbat Shalom. Some of the Kabbalistic rabbis would speak very, very little on Shabbat, very little, and would only speak in Hebrew. What do you mean? We live in Babylon. Nobody's speaking Hebrew. Okay, we're only speaking in Hebrew because they used fences like that to stay in a very rigid mindset because from their perspective, a thought is absolutely a thing. Yeah. Sure.
And so when I was looking into it, it said, Shemayim and Aretz created something. First lesson, it was created, like you're saying, simultaneously, not one before the other. The next lesson, when it explained Aretz, it went into that it explained what the Aretz was, that it was Tohu Vavohu. And one of the explanations that I ended up going with was that what was created was the spark of the potential of the four elements. That it wasn't necessarily matter, it was.
I would hold like that. I would also hold like that. I would hold like that. That's intangible. I would hold like that. I would also hold. Yes, that's how I would understand it. Because otherwise, you struggle with Tov, Vavohu, and Choshek. What are they? What do you want to do with these things? But if we're talking about something not physically bounded, if we talk about Choshek as the absence of knowledge, and we talk about Tohu as this and that, we're in much. I agree with that. I would hold that. That it's.
Don't they say if you want to do a good deed and you don't get to do it? Thoughts,
Right.
you get the mitzvah.
Right, because a thought has value. A thought has massive value. By the way, with our young adult program, a big part of the program is to teach them to be ambitious in their thoughts and then to harness those thoughts because that's. Hi Terry, how are you? Because that's not always a natural perspective. To be ambitious in my thought process and then have the courage to harness it is a big deal. Okay. Or we know. What does or mean? Knowledge, right? Or means knowledge. Now, when we say that or means knowledge, that God creates or, which means knowledge. By the way, it's all in the context of Adam. All in the context of Adam. Okay, of man. So when we say that or means knowledge and doesn't mean light, and as we've mentioned, When I say that or means knowledge, it means vayar means an intellectual awareness, not simply seeing something. Mar'eh, which is something that happens with a prophet, is an intellectual experience, right? Anything related to or is intellectual, right?
Created it, but he didn't give it.
1 second, very nice. So now what we're with is the first part of creation is or, right? Or meaning absolute knowledge, boundless to a point of understanding everything but the essence of God. We can understand everything but that last 1%, so to speak. We say that the or manifested in several different planes. It manifested in the physical plane on the planet, it manifested in the celestial plane in the heavens. We hold that the kochavim, the stars, have power, stars that we see. We hold that they pulsate with knowledge, that they're meant to be explored intellectually, and we have works on that, that the stars are not benign rocks. We don't hold they are. We hold that there's order in the stars as well. We hold that there's order in the Shemesh, in the sun. And we hold as well, of course, that there's order in the Sechel, in the intellect, and in the angels. If you look a minute, it says, Vayar Elokim, look at verse 4, Pasuk Daled. Vayar Elokim et ha'or ki tov, ve'abdel Elokim ben ha'or u'ben ha'choshech. That God sees that the or is tov, right? How is this affirmation by HaKadosh Baruch Hu different than every other pasuk in Bereshit? In every other pasuk, when God reviews his work, so to speak, he says it slightly differently. Just kitov, right, Shelley? Great. In every other case, it says, Bariyah Hashem kitov. In this case, the order is called out again. In this case only, the order is called out again to tell us that this is everything, everywhere, anything, and it's essentially our goal and our drive was to amass as much order, as much knowledge as we possibly can. Yeah.
It's like he was shocked that it was good.
He was shocked?
He had an epiphany when he looked at it, that he said it's good.
Could be.
But he knows it's good, he's all good.
Right. He's telling you it's all good. Right. He's intellectually acknowledging that the massive intellectual X is perfect. That's what he's doing. So, for our perspective, it frames some very important things. As Adam, we're about to be created, right? We're about to be created in a little bit. As Adam, we're framed by the concept of machshava, of thought, that is in the context of creation, that's a subsidiary of this thing called or, absolute knowledge. And the nice part of that is that Aretz and Shamayim are created together in one thought, making it crystal clear that we don't have a boundary, that the boundary is about the person's efforts and nothing more than that. So if a person wants to break through to the highest levels of knowledge, we see in the case that the Gemara brings down that they went into Pardes. Some of the rabbis went into this intellectual paradise, and some of them never came out, right? Some of them didn't come out. So we limit it just a bit. If somebody attempts to reach the etzem, the essence of God, that doesn't work, and the person will probably lose his mind. But everything up to that point is accessible to us. So this notion of order is the backdrop for us. Now, when we say that order is a backdrop for us, the Malbim brings a very interesting perspective that many of the other rabbis echo. And he says that the or that was established here becomes the or panimi, the internal light of the individual. Meaning, he says that the individual is made by light, meaning intellect, and cover, and light and cover, and light and cover, and light and cover. So he says that the tip-off here was that there are a number of elements of knowledge and knowledge accessibility, strengths to access knowledge built into the person. And that's what we call or panimi, an internal light. And that internal light has the capacity to radiate out. So when you see someone who has certain chen or certain positive energy, we hold that that's the or panimi. And in fact, they say that there are layers and layers, right? Layers is a layer and then light, a layer and then light, a layer and then light, which means that the more I delve in, the more I discover. The more I look in me, the more I unleash. The more I work in me, I build my brain, I challenge my brain, I force my attempt to engage more light. The more I do that, the more I discover what's in me. So it's in me to discover. And therefore, later on, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Adam and Chava ketonet or with an ayin, he gives them a skin to cover themselves after the sin. It meant that the light becomes constricted. It means it becomes less accessible. And man who originally radiated with an absolute light of intelligence now has that dampened and has that limited, and it's harder for him to get to.
Intelligence? Is it only intelligence? Because there are other parts of the person's, the humanness of the soul.
We're going to talk about soul in a minute. We'll talk about that in a minute. So this is a quick overview on or, and this is the main makeup of man. Man's main element is or. It's knowledge. That's our main element. Everything else is just the case. Everything else is just the cover. You with me, Jen? The main element in the human being, huh? No good? You're thinking the main element is something else. Okay, so let's take them. The main element in the human being is or, is intellect, is the light of knowledge that we can reveal, that we have the capacity to reveal to the greatest, nearly the greatest extent possible. We can get to level 99, so to speak. You get to level 100, the system explodes. But can we get to level 99, 98? Yes. Yes, the capacity is there. Is it in segments? So there's light and a cover. There's light and a cover. So what do? You break through. You build your intellect. You break through one partition. You build your intellect. You break through another partition. That's the system. And what we've done through the sin, so to speak, of Adam and Chava is we've worked harder and harder to remove the ketonet or, the skin cover that clouds some of our intellectual capacity, and just achieve. And that's,
If they had all the knowledge,
huh?
if they didn't have the covering, why'd they eat the apple to
Okay.
gain?
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
No, because you're saying they had all the knowledge. And then it was covered, but clearly they didn't have all the knowledge because she ate the apple to get the knowledge.
Right. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. Yeah.
We pray now, yes, that we thank Hashem also for giving us wisdom first and then understanding.
Yeah, it's too different. Let's not talk about understanding yet. Stay just with wisdom now. Okay. Stay with wisdom for now. Just stay with wisdom. Yeah. I'm not talking about spiritual.
No, so very good.
I'm talking what we call intellect, what we today call intellect. People what? That's a very interesting question. The question becomes, let's say, someone gets dementia, right? It's a question that some of the great rabbis dealt with in a bunch of works. I don't know, maybe it was 40 or 50 years ago. And they said that the ideas on knowledge is never lost. The knowledge is inaccessible, but never lost. So that knowledge remains the permanent element of that entity, that person, right? And is never foregone. It's not accessible. The question came out in a big way with Rabbi Soloveitchik, alav shalom. He was a giant of the generation. And when he got sick, I remember everybody, it was horrible. People were really devastated by it. And so that revived this search of what happens to a person's knowledge when he can no longer access it. What happens to a person's knowledge after 120 years? The question came, is it gone or is it permanently define him? And the answer is it permanently defines him. And what's also very exciting is that in the next stage of life, in the eternal life, in Olam Haba, so to speak, right? The knowledge accessibility doesn't end, and it's still dynamic.
I think Jack did it on his, like a computer, you have to know how to access it.
You have to not access it, yeah.
It's always there.
It's always there, you have to not access. It's there and it's defining. No good, Terry, you don't like it?
So when you have that, you got to show. She's so small.
When she leaves the physical package that binds her here, and she becomes unburdened by that, then she reclaims her access to it. That never goes away. That's the Torah perspective on it. I don't think it's apologetic. I think it's very serious, because we also know that a person will continue to grow intellectually when this run is over. That was also a big question with the rabbis. The big question with the rabbis was, when somebody leaves this world after 120, right? Is that intellectual growth stop? Was it only here? And the answer is no. There's an absolute flow and an absolute connectedness between physical heavenly, non-physical heavenly, and super non-physical heavenly. And that flow isn't constricted. And therefore, when we reach a point when a soul is temporarily not here, right? We hold when Mashiach comes, all the souls will come back, right? All the souls will come back in some form, right? Question became, so let's assume that's year 6,000. We believe it's year 6,000. There's another 4,000 years that follow the year 6,000. And the question became, well, what does man look like in those 4,000 years? Man, I mean men and women, and what is his capacity? And when you look into it a little bit, it's very exciting. What man looks like is Adam before the sin, which means, on the one hand, things are only black and white for him, which we might consider a little bit boring because we have no gray, right? But the black and white brings with it fantastic intellectual opportunity. So we hold that when the soul is in the docking station in Olam Haba, does it grow? Does it have the capacity to grow intellectually? We hold yes. When the soul comes back in some form and manifests during that post-Mashiach time period for the remaining 4,000 years, so to speak, what is the capacity of that soul? That soul no longer has choices, is back to a pre-eating of the apple black and white possibility, which enables the soul to have the greatest ever intellectual opportunity. Because we spend most of our lives struggling in the gray. Should I, might I, can I? We struggle working through what happened in Gan Eden. But when things become black and white, it becomes just wide open and clean. I don't have the trials and tribulations anymore. Now,
And there's no word.
right, there is no world. No world as we know it. That's right, there's no world as we know it. So in the post-Mashiach world, choice goes away. There's no more choice. There's no need for choice. Things are good or not, black or white, very, very cut and dry, which we look on in a certain sense as, who wants to live in that? What does that mean? Where's the color? But the way we understand it is, that's not an absence of color. It's an absence of doubt. It's an absence of question. It's a much different search with a wide open track of intellectual capacity. It's heaven, huh? Do we have proof? I don't know if we have proof, but that's the system. It is. It is. You don't have to accept it. Right. You know, I want you to just put bookmarks in your mind. We're not going to go into it completely, or we're just going to touch on it briefly, but put the following bookmarks in your mind. It's all about the intellectual side of things, all about that. It's all about intellectual achievement. Of course, is emotion precluded? Of course not. Are love and relationships precluded? Of course not. Is chesed precluded? Of course not. But the drive, the primary drive, is for intellectual achievement, because intellectual achievement brings me closer to God and an understanding of the absolute reality, 98% of the story. Now, the way it's, 100%, 100%. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Let's talk about that in a minute. Very nice. That's very interesting. Let's talk about that in a minute. So when we change the word Avram to Abraham, right? When we're changing, we're expanding the word. When we change the word Hoshea to Yoshua, right? We're not just adding a letter. What we're doing is, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing is, he's looking at the intellectual bandwidth that this neshama had, and he's assessing that it already maxed it out. And therefore, I'm going to expand that bandwidth in order to enable more intellectual capacity or achievement. So when we change Hoshea to Yoshua, we're not simply giving him Hezuk, we're not simply adding an element of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name to him, we're doing much more. We're enabling him to have the skills to build what became known as the greatest generation in Jewish history, the first generation in the land of Israel. That was a spectacular generation, and he was its king, and he had fantastic capacity, not quite on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, but pretty close, right? When we move Avram to the father of our nation, and Avram maxed out his intellectual span, and he was pushing to move beyond it. And then we say he's going to be what, Viv? Famon Goyim, right? She's holding it back. I can't. When she holds it back like that, she's like in a burst. So we're going to have to let her speak. When we say that Avram he reached a certain intellectual achievement and awareness, and now he can blow past it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu changes his name to enable that, to give him more intellectual runway. Havod. Yeah.
You ever see it, some people see every single page is stamp on top of stamp. And when she used and maximized the whole passport, she had that extra pages.
There you go. Beauty. That's it. That's it. That's it. Perfect. Perfect analogy. I love it. I'll see you back here in 10 years, right, Flora? That was the line of the decade. It's the best.
Is that what they say, Yirmiyahu, Yeshayahu? Is that
Yeah,
still
yeah,
what
each
they-
one is different, but, so that's our element of order, okay? That's our element of order, good. Yeah,
As a result of Adam's sin, about sin,
and
that's.
so I don't want to call it a sin, we're gonna talk about it next time, we're gonna talk about it next week, God willing. I don't want to call it a sin, but it was a result of something. It was a result of something that we had to go through this process. Result of something, good. Let's take the next term, Tov. Vayad Elokim ki tov, vayad Hashem ki tov, perfectly imperfect. What does that mean, perfectly imperfect? No? No? What do you think? There's room for improvement, great. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make it perfect with the opportunity for us to build it further, good. That's the backdrop of man's creation. Vaya'as. Again, I'm bringing all these terms up because these terms are used in the context of creating man. God is boreh, the person, and then we use the term vaya'as. What does vaya'as mean? Physical action, right? Some of the things were created in the world with bidiyah, which is thought into existence, and then they were acted on with the term vaya'as. They were acted on. You're on physical action. See physical action. Fourth term down. Okay. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. This is all a backdrop for Adam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam, right? Bitsalmo ubidmuto. What does that mean? Selem and dmut. How do we explain those terms? Selem and dmut. What does selem mean and what does dmut mean? Frida? Well, physical and spiritual. Physical is a little hard to say, but tell me, based on what we said here. We said that the Tselem is similar in potential. Is that right? Is that right? Yes or no?
God's image.
Huh?
God's image.
In God's image, but work with the term here. Tselem. When I take a picture, it's matzlema. I take a picture, right? Is it exactly the person? No. Huh? Shadow tselem. And therefore what? Shadow means what?
It's like
Maybe
a
it's
hazy
one-sided.
kind of.
One-dimensional.
Theme, like communication.
Okay, so is it similar in potential according to your definition or not? Okay. To God, similar in potential, right?
And that we can create from thought.
That's right. And we can do a lot of other things.
That's creating from nothing.
Absolutely. By the way, when you what's one of the most important things we should give our children is confidence in their thought processes, to embrace their thoughts, to not run away from them, to not subject them to cynicism and reality, and to hold them. It's critically important, right? So similar in potential, selem. You want a shadow, similar in potential, fine. Gemut, similar in action, right? So can we do absolutely what God could do? No. Are we similar in what we could do? Can we create? Can we build? Can we break? Can we this? Yes. Can we do it to the extent that he could do it? Clearly not. But can we do it? Absolutely. Can a monkey do it? No. So when we talk about Adam Arishon, we're talking about a creator in his own right. Adam is a creator. Now, when we say that Adam gave a name to everything on the planet, what does that mean? When he gave everything a name, he called the monkey a monkey, and he called the fish a fish, and he called the mosquito a mosquito, right? What does that mean? If man has the capacity of God, if it's Tov, meaning perfectly imperfect, if he's in the Tselem and Dmut, meaning he has the capacity to create, right? So what did he do when he named everything?
He gave them their potential.
More than that, more than giving them their potential, what did he do? He gave them their identity. Beautiful. He made the monkey a monkey. Man decides that this glob over here, this is a glob over here, not swinging in the trees yet, right? This is a glob over here, right here. By the way, that's a tiny glob over there. Man, Adam, looks at this vast sea of globs and he defines their interaction and their identity. The identity of all those elements in the animal kingdom wasn't defined by God.
What do you mean? You could have called a monkey a dog.
He could, and then it would have been a dog.
What's a dog?
A door? A door or a dog? D-O-O-R? If he called the monkey a door, it would have been a door.
No, it would have still been a monkey.
It wouldn't have been a monkey. He made it a monkey.
Had this unlimited or limited to a certain extent, or to be able to look at the blob and see what the potential is, and then give the identity to.
That's possible. That's a possibility. You could say it that way. You could say it that way. Or you could say Adam has this absolute access to order at that point, right? He has the order pnimi, the internal or, right? And he has absolute unfettered access. We're talking about pre-sin here, right? He has unfettered access and he sees this fantastic possibility and potential that he's mandated to define. By the way, is it any different now? It's no different now. We're not defining the monkey to be a monkey, but we called this a table. We created it. We called those shades. We made that window, right? We built this building. It's no different. It's just maybe it's a step down. You might want to say, okay, it's a step down. We created aircraft, right? God didn't make the aircraft, man did. God made the submarine, God made the spaceship. So it's that same idea. Man made the monkey. Man made the monkey. This
So what was God's? Only through generosity.
no, we don't have to talk about God's intention.
But only through the generosity of the creativity that Hashem gave us.
Fine.
Women had children, and if we weren't built this way, we could never have the children.
Very good.
Hashem instructed us to have a certain amount of not only intelligence, but.
Let me ask something, Jim. Do you have a vast power on influencing your child and the character of your child? You don't have absolute power, but you have vast power, right? Absolutely, right? Good. Okay. So is it so far-fetched to say that the primal man, before there was any gray on the planet, when there was only yes and no, exists and not, can be and can't? Is there anything to say that that person can't define all of the key elements? Why not?
Well, we're partners with Hashem, so of course he gave us.
Okay, you can
partnership.
call it a partnership. It's fine. Of course, we're partners. But I want you to understand that man is a co-creator from day one until today. Who created poetry? God didn't create poetry. Man did. Who created language?
But he gave us the utensils.
No problem. He gave us the essentials. But that's fine. But that's not. I don't want you to say that in a dismissive way because I don't want you to look at it as a downgrading of man. Man is not downgraded. But tehasreo ma'at melokim. He stands a drop below God. He doesn't stand a million miles below God. That's how we should be looking at ourselves. That's who we are, and that's who Adam is.
Call the monkey a monkey.
He made the monkey a monkey. He made the monkey a monkey.
That was his thought.
That's
not
correct.
Hashem's.
That's correct.
So does that like negate all of evolution?
Why? I don't know what the word evolution means, honestly. I don't know, and I don't know. We can't really go there because people go crazy with that word. But I will tell you, was there a development? Of course there was. Is man the same man from when he was created to what he became, even at the time of Noah? Huh? I'm saying that once Adam Arishon decided that the monkey is a monkey, he ain't going to be anything but a monkey. Did man evolve from a monkey? Absolutely not. Unquestionably not. Did man become more sophisticated with time? No question that he did. We say some of the rabbis write that what is the timimut, and not the timimut so much, the sidkut of Noah? What was the righteousness of Noah? That either he created tools for man to work the earth, which made life more just, more productive, less suffering, or we frame Noah as Ish Sadiq because at the time of Noah, which is a while after Adam was created, man's claws became individual fingers, which means that there was a development of the human being. There's no question that man doesn't end up the way he started. By the way, nothing did. I'm talking about physical, intellectual, all of that. Intellectual, 100% there's a difference. One second. In the context of creation, did man change from the beginning did man evolve? Don't use the word evolution, but did man change? 100%. Was it a process? It was a process. In other words, let's go down the page, you'll see some more. The physical body, the goof, was created first, right? The physical body of man was created first. Good. What is another word for goof? Another word for goof that we see in the Chumash is na'al, which is mistranslated as shoe. Na'al means body, right? Na'al means body. Na'al means when HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes to Moshe Rabbeinu, tells him to remove his na'al. He means, I want to take you back to the time of Adam and Chava. I want to allow you to move comfortably and freely, which Moshe Rabbeinu is not able to do at that point, but he achieves that later on in the desert. So when it says, remove the na'al, by the way, Yoshua is presented when Moshe Rabbeinu said, Shal na'alecha me'al dadecha, remove all of your physical limitation, all of your physical construct, come and run with me, because we have a lot to do. Moshe Rabbeinu tells him, I can't do it. I'm not ready. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets pretty angry at him and punishes him. At the end of his life, further on in his life, what do we see? There's absolutely no daylight between God and Moshe. Zero daylight, right? In other words, he had removed the Na'al, reclaimed the reality that Adam and Chava had, where the Or Pinin Mi, the internal light, and the absolute light are one and the same.
That's why they say his eyes were sparkling.
Yeah, eyes were sparkling. And that's why when God tells, when the Malach, right, and when the Malach tells Yoshua bin Nun, says, Shal Na'al, you're not going to get to Moshe's level, but you can remove part of this. You can get part of the way there. So the first thing that man is given is the goof. Good. Next thing that he's given is the neshama. What is the neshama? Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim. When did that come, Sarah? Later. It came later. Right. Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim. Was that in the first round? It clearly was not in the first round. The first round was a goof, right? With Ord, with the light in it. What happens after that? The neshama is placed inside, which what does that do, Allegra? What that does is that seals the absolute uninterrupted link between the physical plane and the non-physical plane. Now the human being can access, when he or she wants, that absolute open access. What?
The second time when it said Hashem removed his essence from man, that's what enabled the first coming, the Selim Elohim, to be activated.
Exactly.
One story, I guess, so to speak.
That's right. But did it? Is it a progress? Is it a process? It appears to have been some level of process. But I'll tell you, to your point, it goes like this. And we mentioned this in the past, some of us, that when we see the repetition of a story, right? When we see the repetition of a story, we hold that was an overlay. In other words, like when we see Kiryat Yam Suf, the splitting of the sea, and then we see the Az Yashir, do we hold that two separate things happen? Of course not. We hold that the Az Yashir is coming to overlay the first story, to give us details on the splitting of the sea that the splitting of the sea story didn't give us. Therefore, If you learn that way, you would say that Perek Bet, the second chapter of Bereshit, is an overlay on Perek Aleph, the first chapter, and by Pak Ba'Pav Nishmat Chaim would overlay the first chapter, and you would say there is no development. But, and you could say that, right? Which would mean that when man was created initially, and it was a body, the soul was given on the spot. That's one way of learning it, because that holds consistent with the fact that when we repeat a story, we're filling in the blanks. The other approach is that the reason the story is repeated is because it's telling you about the internal development of man, not the external formulation of man. So when we start in Perek, the first chapter, we're talking about the external formulation. When we go into the second chapter, we're talking about the internal formulation. And in fact, when the story about the creation of everything else is repeated in the second chapter, it's the same thing. Didn't we say that the plant kingdom was created? And Vayar Hashem Ki Tov, wasn't he thrilled with it? Yeah. So what are you going back and telling me the story again in the second chapter for? Well, either you're filling in the elements of it that we didn't know first time around, or you're telling me there was a progression. Okay, let's touch a few more points. Nefesh is what? Where the body and soul collaborate. Does that hold with your definitions? Yeah. Huh? Does that hold? Okay, great. Sechel is the intellect. Ratzon is the will. All of these elements were given to man. What is the difference between the Sechel and the Ratzon? What is the difference? Sechel and Ratzon. We have both. We have a body, purely physical. We have a soul, purely spiritual, the Shama. We have a Nefesh, which is where the spiritual and the physical meet. This is all Adam, which is us. Then we have the Sechel, which is our intellect. Then we have the Ratzon, which is something else. What is the difference? Huh? Because, but how? Why does it come before everything? So give it to me. Go one step back. Why? How? How does it do that? How does the Ratzon do that? Huh? So very good. So very good. So we hold that the Ratzon will, right? Son or will. We hold the will of God is only good. It's nothing else. And this is just an important, just put this in your minds in brackets. The will of God is only good. Well, what do you mean? Isn't there plenty of God not good on the planet? Isn't there plenty of not good? Doesn't that exist? Yes. So the not good we hold is a withdrawing of that will, is a less overt expression of that will, not an element on its own. In other words, Ra is an expression of a void. Ra is what fills the void. Therefore, we hold that the Ratzon of God is all good, and the Ratzon of man is all good, right? Doesn't always come out that way, but the Ratzon is inherently, if you took the element called Ratzon, you put it in a box, and you put a microscope on it, it can't express bad. And the Ratzon, in context of the Sechel, of the intellect, the Sechel is the rational and the intellectual, and the Ratzon is not limited to rational or intellectual. It's above that. So what happens is that the Ratzon of man, the will, the absolute will for good in man, ideally connects with the absolute will for good in God, and then we have a grand slam. Anything else is a fallback, is a lesser story. Huh? Yeah, and our job is to break out and reclaim that Ratzon. Let's wrap with this. What's an example of reclaiming the Ratzon? What would be an example of that? Rama, what do you say? Reclaiming the Ratzon. Come on. What was an example? Come on. What do we say? Good. And they go above it in what way? Yeah.
Somebody's challenged by something, and you actually feel that you're pushing through like the butterfly breaking out of the cocoon.
That's right.
Feel it in your.
That's Ratzon. Ratzon is the butterflies breaking out of the cocoon to discover themselves.
And you can't
So
help it.
sechel, intellect, doesn't allow that. Because intellect is not, it's not pure enough. It's not pure enough. So I need the intellect, right? And I need at times to jump outside of the intellect, above the intellect, and connect to this absolute good, the will of good. And that's where I find myself.
So can you say that Hashem gives us Sarah? Sarah is called important to challenge us to break through to ourselves.
1,000,000%. There's nothing to talk about.
But the problem is that like the butterfly, you cannot help that. Otherwise the butterfly dies. It's
Right,
something
you
that's
can touch
very
it.
individual. You're not
It's
allowed to
individual, but
touch it. So
but-
it's very personal,
right.
you know, when they say English, it's all that you feel in your being.
But if I understand, and it's a, you know, this is obvious. We all know this, but we don't know it. We know it, but we don't know it because we say it 1,000 times. If we all understand that the challenges are demands, the challenges are demands. The challenges are not punishments. The challenges are demands. I know my son can achieve more. So you know what? I'm not going to give him the money this month. I use the silly example. I'm not going to give him the money because you know what? I gave him the money last year. And when I gave him the money last year, he was this kind of capacity. He pushed through on this level. I'm not going to let my students sit in a class and just listen to me downloading to him. I'm not going to do it because I know that that person has a vibrant intellect and they have a lot to discover about that intellect. So I'm not going to let them sit there. That's the Yisurim. That's the challenges that we're talking about.
So really the bad people have it going well for them.
Listen, the good people, as we know, are going to be more demanded upon. That's the truth. That's the truth. The gooder you are, the more that is going to be demanded of you. That's the reality. And that's what we don't ever want anything but that, right? As a teacher, I'll tell you, the thing you want least is apathy, right, Viv? What breaks a teacher's heart? Not a very feisty, challenging, doesn't accept the word. What breaks a teacher's heart and breaks their will? Apathy, not caring. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from us? Fight, discover, and so on. So let's wrap up. Against your negative tendencies, against your I am who I am, which is worse than the negative. Worse than the negative. No, fantastic question. This is a very important question. Say it again. It's a very important question.
Very good of the Ratzon.
It's not. It's a beautiful question. Is the inherent good of the Ratzon the neshama or not? The Ratzon is above the neshama. It's sort of what frames the neshama. So my Ratzon, our Ratzon, is an extension, is a branch of God's Ratzon, which is the highest level we can achieve. And the Ratzon will guide the neshama. The Ratzon will color the neshama. So what do I want most? I want to discover my Ratzon. That's what I want. I want to discover my will. I want to discover, that's what I want most. I want to break through the sechel, and I want to discover my Ratzon. I want to break through the intellect, because the intellect is limiting. The intellect is rational. The intellect is practical. So I want to break through that, and I want to say, you know what? I'm going back to school. I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to do this X. That's what we want to do. So the Ratzon sits in this place above everything, and it's bounded by nothing, and it's only defined by good. It's only good. It's Ratzon Tov. There is no Ratzon Ra. There's only Ratzon Tov.
So a lot of times I heard something great the other day. It says you don't win, you learn.
Yeah.
That's not, if you don't win, you lose,
Right,
you don't
that's
win,
better.
you learn.
Right. So let's wrap up. Let's just pull the pieces together. When we look at this thing called Adam, we're not looking at a person, we're looking at humankind, Enoshut. And to look at Enoshut or humankind, we shouldn't focus on the seeming individual who, was a spouse, so to speak, to Hava. We shouldn't look at that person, certainly not to set the platform. Adam is Enoshut. There's interesting questions, which we'll talk about, God willing, next time when we talk about Chava. Why was he called Adam? Why was he called Adam? Why wasn't he called Ish? Why wasn't he called Nivra? So somehow we're going to see that all of these elements that are baked into Adam are us. They're us. The absolute access, the Ratzon being the driving factor, the knowledge being baked in, the Or Pnimi being there, several levels of it there. When we say Malbish, I don't mean we're talking about, give me the Or Pnimi, let it burst forth again. So when we talk about a composite or the DNA of us, that's Adam. Adam wasn't a guy who we became like. Adam is us. And when we talk about Adam, these are many of the core characteristics that make him up and therefore make us up. We're going to talk about her next week. Yeah. Well,